Hello there, I'm Callum Johns, and welcome to the EU in Review, where I review the Star Wars Expanded Universe as I experience it. This time I'm going to be continuing with the classic Marvel Star Wars run in my journey to issue 108. I'm going to be talking about issue 18 through to issue 23, so there's a few there, but it's all sort of one story arc. Sort of. So, issue 18 is written by Archie Goodwin and illustrated by Carmine Infantino and Gene Day. It starts off with this title of The Empire Strikes. An interesting thing to have before Empire Strikes Back. I do wonder what actually got Luke into the trance state. Maybe it was first time doing it, but still they don't give much explanation as to why he's really out of it. It's a mystery that they don't answer, which it'd be nice if they gave actual information for that. I like how Luke is shown practicing with the lightsaber more, that's always good. Han specifies that he's a spice smuggler, which is interesting, and not just a normal smuggler. There's a panel where Luke's face is funny, on page 5, where he says no, and I mean, it doesn't look like Luke, but that's how the art is at the moment. Apparently there's specific rebel armour. You can identify a rebel by just looking at the armour, which I think doesn't quite make sense. They just have what armour they can get. Han having the auto-nav bit off is odd. He would usually rely on his navigation equipment, so I guess it's just one of the quirks of the Falcon at the time. New and improved TIE fighters seem to lean more towards how the TIE Advanced Times 1 looks like, the one piloted by Darth Vader in the new. And Strom's Star Destroyer is a bit different. It looks less refined and has sharper edges to it. I like how Han is the voice of logic when he's in his element on the wheel. He actually has some good knowledge there and wisdom to share. And it's interesting how Senator Greyshade says that most of the military funding for the Empire comes from the wheel, from gambling. You'd think they wouldn't rely just on that source of income. Anyway, on to issue 19, which is also written by Archie Goodwin. All of these are written by Archie Goodwin, but this time it's illustrated by Carmine Infantoni and Bob Wyacek, not Gene Day. They changed it up a little bit. I like how they use the ricocheting bolts idea from A New Hope against the troopers. So in A New Hope they ricochet some bolts around places in the garbage compactor. They use that in here, which is cool. Han in some parts looks like the Joker, so it looks like the old... what's his face? He looks like Jack Nicholson Joker without the makeup on. It's interesting how Chewie was the sneakiest on the wheel and actually was escaped capture the quickest. I love how people underestimated Chewie just for him to win the brawl. Them betting on him losing adds to the world building, which I think is cool. And Mastercom, which is Master Computer, is actually a cool droid. I thought it was really cool how it transfers itself when attacked to go into a new body. That's a cool function there. Issue 20 is written and illustrated by the same people as issue 19. And I like how the Imperials and Rebels try to play each other, and they set up the charade to make the Rebels look bad. And I like how they add that sort of cunning little plot in there. I really like the dialogue between Greyshade and Strom. It shows a really interesting relationship between the two of them. I don't know why you'd wipe a droid's memory if you're melting them to slag anyway. I guess just to make doubly sure they can't give any information. And Han in the Gladiator Pit actually reminds me of part of Tales of the Bounty Hunters with Boba Fett's story, where Boba recounts that Han was in a fighting pit and took out all the competition. It's possibly connected. Maybe a reference back to that. Or it may not be. It might be a different instance. Han has a power mace and a power shield. Quite original names, surely. They could have thought of better names for that. I do like how Leia saves herself and Luke disappears. I like how Leia saves herself and Luke disappears from where he was, but still don't explain about the trance properly. Anyway. I like how they make sure to reference that the Senate was dissolved, which is a nice touch, as Tarkin said in A New Hope. Issue 21, the only difference is it's illustrated by Jean Day instead of Bob Wycheck. The rest is the same. Page 4, Leia's face is super weird and changes to another completely off close-up in the next panel. It's weird. The art's a bit odd in these Marvel issues. Luke has lovely flowing locks. It's like he's growing his hair out for whatever reason, and it looks majestic for whatever reason. Lovely flowing locks. Majestic looking. Like He-Man or something. Luke dealing with fear is a nice thing to put in. And it's showing Luke breaking out of the bindings is a cool moment. His lightsaber changed colour to yellow on page 8. But then on page 9, it's the staple red colour of the lightsabers in this classic Marvel Styles art, which is a bit odd, I thought. They confirm that Darth Vader is alive, so I guess it took a long time to make his presence known once he found his way after A New Hope back to an Imperial outpost somewhere. It's good to see that Vader is merciless as always. They get his character quite right in that respect. Han gets sprayed with a narco mist as a medical solution to heal his ribs. And that's a different compound that I haven't encountered before in the EU. So I guess it's some sort of narcotic mist. He's also shirtless again. But at least there's a bit more reason this time than when he's shirtless before. And Chewie at the end has a blaster, but the previous issue said blasters were banned in the Gladiator pit. There's a little inconsistency there, I think. And then in issue 22, illustrated by Bob Wycheck again, coupled with Carmine Infantoni, written by Archie Goodwin, as all these ones are. Chewie on the front cover has the blaster in the Gladiator pit. So possibly the blasters could have just been banned for the previous ones, the preliminaries, because the other gladiators have blasters as well, these being needle ray blasters, which are interesting different ones. And of course we have Chewie versus Han in the pit, which is an interesting way to pit the two friends against each other. Reminds me of the Hunger Games a bit actually. How they don't want just... the overlords want just one of them to win, but they gotta find an alternative. And I love their ideas and creativity here, and what they do with that. And it also has interludes with Vader, which are a good way to do interludes to add to the drama, because it's like Vader's coming to find them and track them down. It's good. Vader says that he thinks that the power of the Force is his alone. Now, this may just be to try and intimidate people around him a little bit, but it isn't true, because the Emperor is a Sith, and he knows that. However, this is before Empire Strikes Back was released, so it's interesting how the different perceptions were there that the Emperor wasn't a Force sensitive. He wasn't a Sith. No one had said he was, so there we go. Also, Greyshade wants Leia to make her love him. And this reminds me a little bit of the courtship of Princess Leia with Prince Isolde. but more so it reminds me of Jedi Prince with Triclops trying to make her love him. Interesting connections there. And last but not least, we have issue 23, which is same writer and illustrator. There's a panel where Leia's nose is a really weird shape. Luke and Leia kiss again. So the amount of times Luke and Leia kiss in these comics is interesting, considering what we find out later. And they make less sense thinking of, in hindsight, that they are brother and sister than the one in Empire Strikes Back is to spite Han. Also, Han's strategy for the pit is revealed, and that's a really cool creative idea. I won't spoil that for people, you can read it yourself. Now, Strom appearing again is nice, and him having drug resistance is a cool thing to add to the drama, so Grey Shade drugged him to try not to interfere with the plans that he had going on. So there's all this bits and pieces of these plans from multiple different people trying to go on in here, which is really cool. They were doing that. I like that. And I like Master Com's personification in the droid body. So it gives the droid a bit of a character and all that, which is good. The Empire is depicted ruthless as they should be, which is awesome to see. And at the end, I like how Han jabs at Chewie for leaving the money behind, but of course it helped them escape. Because inevitably we have Empire Strikes Back. They escape the situation. Spoiler alert. But yeah, this was a whole plot line of them travelling to the wheel and going through all this thing where they thought they'd be safe. But then Senator Greyshade wants to try and capture Leia, make her love him, has his own plans for the rebels. And then the Imperials come along. They weren't originally supposed to be allowed on the wheel, but they force themselves onto the wheel, which is a space station that's supposed to be a safe haven for smugglers and that. And yeah, interesting plots from there. So I really enjoyed actually reading this storyline. It's really cool, and check it out yourself if you can. These old Marvel comics have some gems in them, even if they're not quite as on par to the Dark Horse comics, in my opinion. And of course they're S-canon, so there's some things that don't quite line up with the continuity. But they're cool, and definitely worth checking out. I'm enjoying reading them. The art is pretty much what I've said in previous issues. There's some weird shapes to things. They don't look like the actors, but they have fixed that later on. I've read way ahead to what I'm doing in these reviews. Just time how that works. Yeah, it's really cool to read and see also the perceptions of what they thought Star Wars was back before Empire Strikes Back was even released. So, what do you think of this storyline with Senator Greyshade and the Wheel? I'm interested to see if you've read it and your thoughts on it, or what you think from what I've said about here. Sort of quickly going through some things that don't make sense as much unless you've read it. But I tried to explain everything as I go. So, that's all for this video. Hope you enjoyed listening to my thoughts on this. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.